Ironically, even though you're probably going to accumulate more wealth owning a small business, the banks see that as you become a higher risk profile when you're a small business owner buying a house.
Welcome to Living Not So Fabulously. So in November, John and I were attending Yahoo Finance Invest 2024. And that morning of the event, John and I were preparing in our hotel room. I was actually ironing our clothes like I normally do. And we were watching Yahoo Finance on YouTube. And I was listening to this amazing conversation between wealth host Brad Smith and this woman who is helping veteran-owned small businesses. And I thought to myself, how cool would it be to have her on our show? I would love to meet her someday. An hour later, we're at the event, and ta-da, guess who was there?
Hello, Alice, co-founder and president Elizabeth Gore, who is today's guest. Elizabeth is empowering small and medium-sized businesses to achieve equitable access to capital. Through her work, Elizabeth is breaking barriers for women, people of color, veterans, persons with disabilities, and get this, over 91,000 LGBTQ+ entrepreneurs. So let's dive into our interview with this really cool woman, Elizabeth Gore.
Welcome, Elizabeth. This show focuses on sharing money stories. We all have one, and oftentimes it's shaped by our early life experiences. So curious, what is an early life experience that has shaped your money story or who you are today?
I mean, does it count to not have money as a money story, right?
Yes, definitely does.
It's really interesting because I think about stages in my life, right? And your relationship with money, when did it start? And my dad said I was a capitalist since the day I was born, but ironically, I chose public service to start my career. And so I went in the Peace Corps after college, and I got paid $200 a month, which was for room and board, food, everything. And I was in Bolivia, so that was enough, believe it or not. But when you get out of the Peace Corps, they give you amazing health benefits and things to get you back on your feet. But obviously, if you didn't go in with money, you're not coming out with money.
Right.
So when I was in the Peace Corps, I picked up a boyfriend in debt. And when we decided to move to Washington, D.C. together, and, it was one of those times where do you get a temp job while you're looking for a big job? Do you, I certainly didn't have in my mind to start my own company at that time. It was really about housing, food, and the essentials. And it's interesting. I remember we decided to move in together, and making a decision to buy a $99 table was such a crazy decision, right? And now, being almost 50, I still think about that. And so in learning about credit, at that time, that was just what we had to do, which can be very dangerous. But at that time, it really saved us. So I don't know, that's in my mind as, we talk about money, we talk about debt, we talk about credit. But for me, I was very afraid of debt, and I was very afraid not to have money. But there will just be choices in your life that you're actually choosing that. It didn't just happen to you, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. You talk about this idea of being in the Peace Corps and coming out of the Peace Corps jokingly. That's not the place where you go to find financial security,
no,
right?
Not.
This is a show about money. So.
And then you went to D.C., which is not the most important place.
Yeah, and I'm from South Texas, very small town where the cost of living is nil, basically, and then you move to a major metropolitan environment that is very expensive, right?
Yeah.
So what's one step then you did take to start getting financial stability or getting a financial foothold?
Well, I actually like budgets, and I can't do math, so it's kind of ironic. And I do tell people a lot, don't be intimidated by budgets if you're not a mathematician. I mean, that's what computers are for these days, right?
Thank God.
And we did take calculated risks with credit and credit cards. So that first and last month's rent, we had to put it on credit card. And then again, our budget around those basic essentials that we needed to establish. Here's a good example. We can apply for jobs without buying suits.
Oh, right.
I remember that as well. So we needed a place to eat with our table, and then we needed some clothes, right? You can't show up in Birkenstocks, right, to apply for a job. So established a budget. We both applied for credit cards and just started incrementally rat-holing money as we got our jobs. My boyfriend, now husband at the time, he did end up getting a temp job because while I was looking for, he had a different skill set than mine, he could do that. I was more on the humanitarian side and was trying to get into the UN. And so we just started, putting away money to then buy the bigger things we needed to pursue our careers. And then we just lived very frugal, which is not hard when you come out of a hut without running water. You have that frugal mindset and, work towards building up enough money for a down payment on a house ultimately. And we started building equity. Now that took about 5-6 years to get there.
Wow.
But
From the time you graduated, left the Peace Corps,
yeah,
to the time you bought your first home was
Now,
within 5 to 6 years.
right. Now, modest home, let's start there. Very modest home. Interest rates at the time were beautiful. There was, the ability to split your loans in half. I mean, we're in a different economy right now. And so I feel like this was early 2000s. So we were lucky at the time. But yeah, that was really important to me, as a kid that moved around a lot and didn't have, a lot of that anchored stability. For some reason in my mind, a home was mine.
Right,
And even if we had took the rest of our lives to pay it off, that was important to me. I also, to this day, I tell a lot of folks, if you can put money into a mortgage versus rent, I mean, it's just such a better way to build equity over time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you mentioned budgeting. What would you say are maybe 2 or 3 other things that really helped you get to that point? Oh, I think for a lot of folks today, but especially folks in the LGBT community, less homo ownership in our community than the general population. A lot of folks feel like they're getting a late start in life when they get to the point where they can buy a home.
Right.
What suggestion would you say to speed that process up or to be prepared for it?
I will challenge folks quite a bit on their spending. And I mean, how far down can you go to save money towards building equity? And so I really assessing everything from, especially now with subscriptions, for example. I mean, do you need 10 different television subscriptions? Do you need this or that? And then, look, I think the queer community especially are so fashion forward and put together much more than us civilians. And so let's look at other things like that exist right now, like Rent the Runway. I still use it. I mean, it's a way to be fashion forward and presentable, but not buy new things every single week, right? So look at your core costs. We all live Whole Foods. Do you need to go to Safeway for a few years? I mean, there's just ways to cut your core costs down so you can save that money. And then the third thing is, there are still things out there that exist. So for us, we had to get a cosigner. And if you look at the people around you who are maybe more established and can really, they're not going to loan you money, but they can work with you and the banker to maybe co-sign on a loan or co-sign on your mortgage. I do think that is an underutilized tool. People are afraid of it because it feels like you're asking for money when if you are a responsible person who pays your bills, that is really not a risk for that peer set. So that's another thing I would think about.
Right.
Awesome.
Yeah. So the UBS's Investing in Equality report shared that in the U.S., fewer than half of LGBTQ plus folks owned a home compared to national or general population, which is around 2/3. Why do you think that owning a home is so important to building wealth and building financial security and stability?
I mean, a couple of things. Generally, I mean, the economy can be funky, but if you sit on your house long enough, it probably will go up in value. And that does mean putting a stake in the ground and an anchor on where you're living, which can be hard as a young adult because you're excited, you want to move around. But if you can really, think of that as a long-term investment, most cities, I know we've had housing crises before, but in general, the cycles will ultimately go up. I mean, it's more stable than the stock market. It's probably more stable than your 401k. It's just it's a way that you can build. The other thing is there are things you can do in a home to increase the value of the home, right? Particularly if you just happen to be handy or happen to be fashionable or happen to know anything about design. You could probably incrementally also raise the value of that home. And then there's just less risk. I mean, there's just less risk. And the other thing I'll just say, since we're on homes, is don't buy more more than you need in a house.
Yes.
That also, just be very cautious and talk with people about what actually is going to add resale value versus not. I'm from the South. We all love pools. They don't do anything for resale value, even though we want it, but they can actually jack up the sale. I mean, it's there are different things that we all want, but just make sure if you're paying for it up front, you're going to get it in return.
Yeah. It's interesting you made the comment about if you're handy. One of our friends jokes with us, you just need to put a little gay sparkle on that house.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. Exactly, right? I mean, come on.
So John and I, the first time we purchased a home, we were both W-2 employees, right? The second time we purchased a home, our most recent home, we were small business owners. And the process was completely different.
Yeah.
Why is it so different for someone who is buying a home as a small business owner compared to someone who's buying it as an employee?
So I'm making an assumption here that was the process harder as a small business owner?
So much more documentation.
So much more documentation.
So my company is Hello Alice, and we serve 1.5 million small business owners, and this is a major issue in our community. So ironically, even though you're probably going to accumulate more wealth owning a small business, the banks see that as a risk and a volatility, right? So they want to know, open banking is not a hugely popular thing yet, but I'm excited about it because ultimately it'll show, cash on hand, cash in bank, so on. W-2s, it's back to risk, right? You're going to get a paycheck every month. They know where it's coming from. You have stability. And so it's just you become a higher risk profile when you're a small business owner buying a house. By the way, same thing. So when we bought our second home, my husband and I, it's when I was starting Hello Alice, and it was a nightmare. And it was just like, why is this harder now? Well, the first time we were broke kids, right? And now actually, so it is harder. I think it's important to go into it knowing that, so you don't get frustrated. But you can also push back. You still have control, right? Because you've built equity in your first home. You can work with banks, mortgage companies to show, look, I never missed a payment, It's just going to be a higher hurdle.
Yeah. So you elaborated that this is sort of a challenge for small businesses. The people you work with at Hello Alice, to what extent are they challenged by being able to buy a home and what they're dealing with?
Yeah, I would say the biggest issues that we hear consistently are health insurance. So when you start a small business, now it's easier with the Affordable Care Act, but it still can be a challenge in different states. And I'll come back. Buying a home is certainly one of them. And then the third is childcare or elder care.
Yeah.
So which all of us go through at some point on the elder care side. And so these are three challenges that I actually personally think there could be amazing policies coming out of ultimately some administration that gives not just tax credit for small business, but also for home buying and elder care, child care tax credits. We don't have that yet. So if you two run for office, if you could please make that happen.
No, thank you.
But those are challenges. Now we at Hello Alice serve about 91,000 LGBTQ plus small business owners, and I will say that it's an equal issue, those top three with everyone, which is kind of interesting if you separate by demographic. Yeah.
So just 1 second, Elizabeth. We're going to take a quick break.
Thanks for coming back to Living Not So Fabulously. We're going to return here with our interview with Elizabeth Gore. So for our listeners and viewers who aren't aware, what's the elevator pitch for Hello Alice?
Oh, so fun. I'm so excited.
Have you done this before?
I know, well, with passion. So at Hello Alice, we provide equitable access to capital for small business owners to launch and grow. So we work with you on your business planning, on your financial fitness, and then we have an equitable finance center that is helping you find the appropriate credit, loans, grants. I keep using the word equitable. So 90% of our small business owners identify what we call the new majority. Women, people of color, U.S. veterans, the LGBTQ plus community, people with disabilities, which make up, frankly, the vast majority of the 32 million small businesses.
We're going to co-opt that.
Yeah, please. Use it. So I say equitable because our community tends to have less access to mainstream capital. They usually are victims of predatory capital, so high interest rates, payday type loans for starting your business. So we actually scrub anyone who's on our website that's offering credit or loans. We ensure have equitable rates. And then the biggest thing we do is prepare you for those transactions, or we'll tell you not to do it, which is my favorite. When I'm like, you don't need a loan.
Yeah.
You're cash flowing great.
Right.
So we have something called the business health score, where you can come in and it's not FICO. It doesn't hit your credit, but you come in and put in a certain amount of data, and it helps you score the financial fitness of your business. And then we'll put you through 90 days of improving that.
So it's like a business evaluation?
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly. And then my favorite part of what we do is there are self-selected communities on Hello Alice. So we work with partner organizations. So in your community, it's Start Out, it's the National Gay and Lesbian Chamber, and other groups who are really working with a specific demographic to ensure that they can bring their whole selves to their business. So we have the largest Black-owned business center within NAACP. And so I think of it as, capital is critical, but community is the lifeblood of what we do.
Oh, nice.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, you mentioned 91,000 LGBT small business owners. So you have some experience working with these individuals. What would you say is different about being an LGBTQ small business owner compared to the other businesses that you're servicing or helping?
Well, I love listening and learning with our small business owners. And the thing I hear with the LGBTQ plus community in a really interesting way is why they started their business is quite different. So I meet a lot of, we call our members owners. A lot of our owners in the community started their business because they could not bring their whole self to work. So they were in a corporate job or even their government job and really felt like their full identity was not being shown. And in owning your own business, the hard thing about owning your business is everything lives and dies with you, right? But you're yourself and you're your own boss. And so I think that's a really interesting inspiration for us all to learn from of whether you're a shop owner, you're a t-shirt manufacturer, or you're a tech business, or you're in a service industry, that passion to be who you are and pursue your dream, I think is quite special.
Yeah.
So that is a differentiator that I've heard quite a bit. Yeah.
Do you see any unique challenges with your LGBTQ plus clients relative to the other clients that you have?
I think that one thing is industry specific. So there a vast amount of LGBTQ plus small business owners are in some kind of care or service, healthcare, service industry, and that as an industry has been quite difficult since COVID. So that's more industry specific, but you have a very large percentage of small business owners in that industry, and it's just been brutal, right? Any kind of care or service industry. As it relates to kind of the top three challenges, it's really mirrored across our community. One of the areas though that I've heard a lot, and I think the NGLCC has worked on a lot is partnerships. So we found that a lot of our LGBT plus communities are not going out and embracing other companies to pull in and do business together. So because the organized network is young, is something I would say. So that's why I always am promoting some of these organizations that are business networking within the community, because I think it's a great place to have peer-to-peer mentorship, to find business partners, to get tips on, which bank do I use or not. So that's something that I hope strengthens within the community.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Nice. So you brought it up,
Uh-oh.
the whole idea of policy.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
taking a turn towards policy. So what are you looking forward to the Trump 2.0? Are you seeing anything that would help small businesses, individuals that you support through Hello Alice?
So I think what is critical right now for all of us is to be communicating with the new policy makers. The administration, the Trump administration, also just as important is the House and Senate small business committees are really important because those are going to transition as well. Even though the House has stayed Republican, there is a new committee head there. And then the Senate Small Business Committee will have a new head. Though the amount of policy they make on a monthly basis is so critical.
Really?
And so all of our communities writing in on what's important, whether it's taxes, whether it's immigration, whether it's permitting is a big deal in our small business community. Right now is the time. I know in an election cycle, we're fervent, we're using our voices, we're championing on who the candidates we want to win. We got to be just as loud because now people are in those seats and they need to hear what we need. The other I just want to stress is the head of the Small Business Administration, whoever Trump appoints, they need to hear you all, they need to hear our small business owners. So we're very committed at Hello Alice as soon as folks are in those seats to bring our entire community in their needs. Number one is tax. I mean, tax credits, delineating between corporate and small business is really important. I'm not seeing that yet. I'm a little nervous about it.
Okay.
Harris campaign had a $50,000 tax credit
Right.
and really delineated what small business means. And so that's really critical right now. And then I cannot understate how important your state elections are. So any small business owners, they're dealing first with their city, municipality, then their county, then the state. Whoever are in those seats also should be hearing from you on what you need in your specific community. So that sounds like a lot of work.
I was just going to say, whew.
I know it sounds like a lot of work, but on behalf of all your peer sets, I think sitting down maybe even for 15 minutes a week and shooting off some emails. You just go to ca.gov or texas.gov. You'll put in your zip code. It'll pop up who those electeds are and sending them emails about what's important to you. It does matter and it does add up. And we're going to do that. You can send it to me. And, Hello Alice, we're really going to be also representing our communities.
Nice. Wonderful.
Awesome.
So you have a background in Dell Technologies.
Yeah.
How does one make the leap from Dell to small business? And what was that experience like?
So I love Dell Technologies. I mean, what a great company. And I met them because I was actually with the UN for 10 years, and Michael Dell was a big advocate with the UN for small business globally. So I got to know him, got to know the company. For a Texas-based company, Dell, I think they were one of the first leaders on LGBTQ plus rights within their own employees. They're big on advocacy. They do a lot of supplier diversity, which I love. Actually, $4 billion a year in supplier diversity. Contracting. So I was just really attracted to the company, and I did want to leap to the private sector. My husband is a local elected official. This goes back to the money conversation. One of us we're starting to have kids and elder care to make that jump, and I really respected the company. So I had the great opportunity to move over to Dell, learned so much from Michael Dell and his team on small business. And I've always been obsessed with small business, I have to admit. Even, in the Peace Corps and then 10 years with the UN, I was working in emerging economies, not here. But if someone owned their own business, they just had the ability, the dignity, and the almost democratization of money to work on their own health care, their own education. It's sort of freedom. And then when I got back home and started facing, what were opportunities and issues here, I just was obsessed with small business owners. So Dell is the number one provider of technology. They're also the most affordable technology for small business owners. And I just got in the weeds, but then I got really frustrated because particularly, I was at the time thinking about women. It was so hard to launch and grow a business in this country, which is ridiculous, right? And then you start looking at people of color and the LGBTQ plus community, or U.S. veterans who have not built up credit history. So I met my amazing co-founder, Carolyn Rods, who's this badass Latina. She's very technical. She'd built several businesses, and I'm not technical whatsoever, but I can build stuff. So we just put our heads together and came up with this idea of Hello Alice on how can we get these amazing communities more access.
Yeah.
At the time, it was access to everything. We boiled the ocean at first. And then we've slowly narrowed into capital, as without that, you really can't do anything.
Right.
So here we are, 1.5 million small businesses, and 10 years later.
What really surprised me about our interview with Elizabeth is how she said that LGBTQ plus entrepreneurs don't necessarily support other entrepreneurs in our community the way that other demographics tend to.
I know, that's a little bit of a surprise. Exactly. I mean, it is kind of crazy. We say that we're so collective as a community, right? So here are 3 ways that we can collaborate as LGBTQ entrepreneurs. The first one is social media collaborations. And that isn't just liking and sharing each other's content. That's actually creating content together. And it also is sharing each other's work through things like our newsletters. LGBTQ entrepreneurs and small business owners can also join communities, things like Facebook groups, LinkedIn groups, as well as Hello Alice. And if you're a financial advisor that works with LGBTQ entrepreneurs or individuals, invite in other LGBTQ lawyers and CPAs so that you give your clients a holistic approach to wealth building.
Of course, don't forget to run that by your legal and compliance departments and get the appropriate solicitor's agreements when necessary.
Thank you, Compliance John.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Living Not So Fabulously. Don't forget to join us every Wednesday at noon Eastern Time on yahoofinance.com, your favorite podcast player, as well as YouTube. And don't forget to click all the bells and whistles, like, subscribe, set all the notifications, and until next time, stay fabulous.
This content was not intended to be financial advice and should not be used as a substitute for professional financial services.